Hello everyone, Louisa Brown, the Youth and Schools Officer here for the Scotland-Malawi Partnership. I'm really pleased to be sharing a quick presentation with you today. It's the debrief and lessons learnt evaluation presentation that we did amongst SNP staff, and we felt that we learned so much from this youth festival this year that we just had to share it with everyone else as well. So if you'd be interested to hear about everything we've learned, please do stick with us and share your thoughts as well. We're still always open to hearing from you. Obviously, the last year has been an unprecedented year, and we're going to sort of look through all the learnings, challenges and successes that we've experienced throughout designing and running this year's youth festival. So first up, what was the Scotland-Malawi Partnership Youth Festival this year? So basically it existed to be a celebration of our country's relationship, a deeper look into some of the complex issues that underlie it. It ran for a week, Monday to Friday, from the 15th to 19th of March, and was a week-long event with engaging online activities, which in the end reached over 250,000 people, which was absolutely astounding and shows the power and the reach of digital. It was very much designed by young people in both countries by our absolutely excellent youth festival team, and it's designed to inspire and support more young people in both Scotland and Malawi to engage in our historic partnership. And as we all know, it was centering around the key themes of climate change and race inequality. And within that, we'd produced 9 new schools resources, 6 youth-led events, 3 youth-led podcasts, 2 youth-led competitions, and 1 brand new youth-led Instagram channel. Yes, we worked the youth committee and the youth festival team incredibly hard, and they did an absolutely stellar job. So again, the objective of this was to engage young people across Scotland and Malawi to lead the conversation on climate change and race inequality. So back in January 2021, we kind of decided that we needed to settle on some strategic objectives, which was a little bit of a challenge, given that the situation with schools was so uncertain. But we settled on these, which were an interesting challenge at the time, and we rolled with as much as we could have given the situation. So first up, we tried to increase awareness and engagement, awareness of and engagement in Scotland's bilateral relationship with Malawi amongst young people in Scotland. Second most, to support Scotland-Malawi school partnerships through offering information, content, inspiration to both teachers, students, and support sharing between schools. We knew that this objective would be the hardest one to achieve through the festival itself, but we tried our very best. And the last strategic objective was to help young people meaningfully explore core themes around the bilateral relationship. And that was specifically this time looking at climate change and race inequality. This is the one that I personally felt that we had most potential to really work on. So the people that we engaged as part of this event obviously was very much all hands to deck from the Scotland-Malawi Partnership staff. Also more hands to the deck from the youth committee itself. That expanded out into the youth festival team, so we included even more young people from Malawi into this specific event. We worked closely with teachers, finding out what the challenges schools were facing at the moment, how things were developing, things were changing day to day, week to week. We really needed to keep our fingers on the pulse there. And we also worked with global education organisations to produce a lot of our schools resources and also get advice from about the situation and how it was looking for education at the moment. Also, not forgetting our most important stakeholders, partners, our wonderful partner office in Malawi, MASP, the Malawi and Scotland Partnership. It's been incredible to work with them, and they were really absolutely key stakeholders in a very big way. And not to forget also the SNP Scotland-Malawi Partnership membership. It's just been wonderful to be able to call on so many wonderful speakers, so many experts, and so many people so interested in to hear youth opinion. Our target audience, we cast the net even wider than usual. Usually we're just sort of trying to have an event for schools partnerships. But in light of the pandemic and knowing that this would be particularly difficult, we winded this right out to, all young people, youth groups, schools obviously as well, but also students. A lot of our youth committee were also student age and talking how there's not really a way to engage with, your interest in Malawi once you leave school. And I really wanted to provide a platform for young adults as well. And what was new for this year is that we were trying to engage young people in Scotland and Malawi as far as possible as well. Yes, it's an event run from Scotland, but that is something that we were trying to work on and sort of learn from this year. It's the first time we hold this entirely online. So all the evaluation data was collected from as many of the above as possible. It was done through Zoom polls on the live events, post-festival surveys with key stakeholders and audience members, written feedback via email, and also all the comments via social media as well. And so we set targets in January 2021. These were really set in sort of 2020 as well. It was really difficult to tell what on earth was going to happen with schools. And as COVID-19 progressed and the situation progressed, it became more and more apparent that it was going to be very, very difficult. But we've stuck with these targets all the same and used them for guidance for our work. However, it has been sort of interesting to try and measure some of them particularly. So first up, we wanted 12 to 30 points of engagement during the week. We created 21, which included all the resources, events, podcasts, things we've mentioned before. I was really pleased with that plethora of ways to engage, given the difficulty of the situation, Zoom fatigue, all these sorts of things that young people especially are experiencing right now. For me, it was so important to make sure that there were so many different routes to engagement that you could choose. And we will talk a little bit later about what was most successful. We wanted a high number of participants' feedback to describe their engagement as very good or excellent, 80 to 90%. And I was so pleased to say that 97% from the Zoom polls themselves said that the event they attended was excellent or very good. And we wanted to have 10 positive named impact statements. Wonderful to have actually gathered 50 of these. Thank you so much to all of you already who have already sent in some of your impact statements there. Gender balance was a funny one. Obviously, we'd like 50-50, 60-40 in that realm. We had just 2 male members of the youth committee choose to engage with the youth festival itself. So there was quite a predominance of female members, about 7 of them involved there. And in terms of female engagement as speakers across the festival, there was 23 and just 11 males. So a little bit of a tipped balance there. But I will say that male speakers and contributors had really prominent roles. And some of the females had sort of less prominent roles in comparison. So the actual delivery of the festival, I think, maybe sort of came across as more gender balanced as these numbers speak to. So the harder targets to measure, given the changing situation, are all going to be talked about on this page. We wanted 100 to 300 young Scots to take part in at least one formal digital workshop. We can tell overall we had 147 participants on Zoom. A little bit hard sometimes to tell their exact location, but I would like to be able to sort of try and discern that we had a decent number of young Scots in there. We wanted 6 to 15 teachers or school partnerships engaged and supported. Again, very hard to tell because we changed our format of delivering school workshops and CPD live to being downloadable resources as CPD and education workshops for all ages. So we hope that that number has been reached, but it's also difficult to monitor. But that being said, we have made the resources open to the public for the rest of 2021. So at least by the end of the year, I think we'll have definitely reached this target. And I'll be communicating with teachers as we go on to find out who has been running them or what they're looking for. So we wanted 1,000 to 2,000 young Scots to have some sort of passive digital engagement. That's such as sort of a reference as seeing Scotland Malawi partnerships messaging in their social media stream. Given that we reached over 250,000 people overall, I would say that it's maybe possible to assume that 1,000 to 2,000 of these were young Scots. I would hopefully be able to assume that through the Instagram page as well, and the medium the media was putting out on news feeds there, but possible to assume this. Again, hard to measure. 150 to 300 young Scots, we wanted them to have some sort of active digital engagement, such as taking part, producing digital content, sharing in discussions, sharing online, following the Instagram channel. From what I can gather in this order for Scottish young people, the new Instagram, the youth-led Instagram channel was the most relevant for Scottish young people during the COVID pandemic, followed by listening to the podcast and then attending the live events in third place. I think, again, difficult to evaluate online when not everything is a live event itself. But this is what we're sort of gathering so far, the impression we're getting. So of course we tried to find out what people thought of the event. It was just a sort of straight up rating from very good down to, or from excellent down to not very good. It makes SMP look very self-congratulatory of ourselves, but I think we really did have a good time, especially working as a team together. We've got resource contributors saying, you know, very good, and they've all had really lovely comments to say, and some really constructive comments there as well. Our partner office MASP also said excellent and lots of very good, so thank you for that. We've got lots of things to talk about between our offices as well about partnership work going forward. Speakers rated the event. There was quite a few that responded. They rated events that they were involved in as excellent or very good or average. So again, a little bit across the spectrum there, but generally we're finding the people who were sort of most involved in live conversation, live discussion, or held most responsibility rated the events higher. So this is interestingly reflected in the event attendee ratings as well. So taken from 28 Zoom poll responses in total, we can see that everyone in the blue there represented everyone who voted that the event they attended was excellent. Everyone orange said it's very good, and the grey was good. We didn't get any average or not very good. So that was really nice to see that that was quite a close reflection of what sort of the most involved stakeholders actually rated their experience, as well as 100% of attendees, event attendees also said that their experience has strengthened their connection with either Scotland or Malawi, which is just what we want to achieve. So looking at event numbers versus nationalities, so this graph shows us live Zoom only numbers. We obviously had people joining on Facebook Live as well, or watching back afterwards. But these are the people that signed up and turned up live. So we can see that climate justice at the end there was the most well-attended webinar of the three sort of key evening webinars that we had. And climate change and race equality sort of ranging between about 35 to 42, and I think 57 people in total across these. And in blue, we've got the Scottish attendees, in orange, we've got Malawian, and grey other. I was really pleased to see that we have, you know, it's a majority Scottish attendance for climate change and race inequality events, really good chunk of Malawian still. And for climate justice, we actually had more Malawian attendance than Scottish, which I think is really interesting to see the reflection of perhaps where people's interests most lie within each country. Not forgetting, we had all these events streamed live to Facebook as well. We wanted to measure the reach of those going out further. So this is a comparison of the reach. We had our lunchtime climate leaders events. So they were on the Monday, Wednesday, Friday of the week. They've got slightly lower numbers because I think they were at a sort of a lunchtime time of day. Maybe that was a little bit less accessible or useful for people. It wasn't a sign up event. It was the sort of thing you can just scroll past and dip into, and probably hadn't been sort of as actively promoted as the evening webinars on climate change, race inequality, climate justice. And we can see the real difference there. And I think going forwards, we would try and really make the most of every single event, so we could get those numbers much more equal. So the other facets of the Youth Festival, we obviously had the youth-led podcasts. These are numbers that represent the download numbers. And lots of downloads in Scotland and both Southern Africa, which is really great. After that, they've got lots of downloads in America and India, interestingly, as well. So we're quite pleased with that, and quite pleased that there's quite an equal level of download numbers across the range. Competition entries, we've got 24 entries and counting. The competition is still open until the end of Sunday this week, so we're hoping for a few more before that closes. And the brand new Scott Malawi Youth Instagram page, that was just launched for the first time at the start of February this year, and it's already grown to 157 followers. So it's really exciting, completely youth-led by the wonderful Rachel from our youth committee. So that's just staggering, the success that she's had already. So I wanted to really highlight young people's voices in this, because it's a festival for young people. These are some of my favourite quotes that came out of it. Tiwi from Malawi joined the SNP Youth Festival team, so a young girl from Malawi who joined just to help us with the Youth Festival project specifically. She said the conversations were life mindset changing, organisation and presentation from the kitchen to the table, where everyone had access to the final project blew my mind. I am honestly overwhelmed with such an amazing festival that came out. It was totally new, done in a new way, and I was learning throughout. And I think this just gives, you know, so much reassurance that we've kind of listened enough and stayed on track or held out long enough to see what the situation would be with COVID and plan accordingly for what's going to work with for young people during a pandemic. Also from Rachel from the SNP Youth Committee. She's been with the Youth Committee for over 2 years, and this is what she said about her experience. Being involved in planning the Youth Festival has been an experience like no other. I'm thankful to the SNP as well as for giving me the opportunity to develop and learn more digital content creating skills. I wouldn't have been able to obtain these skills either if it hadn't been for the SNP staff who taught me them, and they were very supportive throughout. Rachel has been absolutely committed and wonderful, putting hours of work per week. I couldn't commend her more. Absolutely fantastic young woman that is going to be highly employable, I have to say, after her work with the Youth Festival this year. Do get in touch if you're interested to work with Rachel. Further, Kathy from the SNP Youth Committee, who's also been a part of it for over 2 years, said she loved this opportunity to work closely with young people in both Malawi and Scotland. She worked directly with Chifundo over in Malawi to design and deliver the climate change webinar and podcast as part of the Youth Festival. She said it was very interesting to educate herself on really important topics and push herself out of her comfort zone. And it was just incredible to see them both go through that experience together, working together internationally. Some quick comments here. I'll let you read yourself from podcast listeners. These are all young people, friends of youth committee members, I believe, that sort of gave comments back to it about what they thought about the youth-led podcasts, all 3 of them. And then event speakers have also sort of mentioned that it's the first time they've done anything like that. They're surprised it went smoothly. They didn't expect it to go as smooth as it did. Really nice to see equal representation of that experience from both Scotland and Malawi here as well. And lastly, we had an event participant say that this sort of knowledge sharing and mindset flowing, this is just so encouraging. And that is one of the main things I get so excited when young people say like this, that they're encouraged and they want more. So I'm very excited by the feedback we got from this page in particular. So obviously we asked people in our surveys from the stakeholder highlights and staff highlights and suggestions for improvement as well. So I'll rattle through these. So some of the highlights is this special online connection with Malawi. This is something we've really discovered and sort of really pushed ahead with in the last year or so, and discovered what the real opportunities there are. And it's a huge opportunity that even when things go back to normal, we cannot ignore how wonderful it is to be able to hold events that can be so inclusive of each other's countries. Another highlight was connecting with 250,000 plus people. It's staggering, and a lot of us didn't know that that was possible until we ran this. As I say, it was an experimental event, and this has been one of the most interesting outcomes from it overall, I have to say. A lot of people said the Young Voices in Climate Justice webinar was really, really hit home and was one of the most interesting conversations. A lot of people said everything was really interesting, but this is one of the ones that they felt, you know, young people were heard alongside experts in the field and put on an equal level. Hearing young people's views was a highlight for a lot of the invited speakers, as was working with the young people themselves. I know the David Livingston Trust worked directly with Ryan and Josephine from the Youth Festival team, and that was a real highlight for them. And I think a lot of surprises were had, you know, in both directions of how wonderful it was to work together. Having the safe space for discussion, really a highlight. All of us really want to be able to talk on such important topics, but sometimes we're held back by fear of using the wrong language or not knowing enough. But we really need to get young people talking about these things and guiding and supporting and setting the right environment for it. And I'm really pleased that it's been picked up on, that was one of the highlights of the festival. Panel discussions, they were all wonderful. I can't thank all the invited speakers and the young people enough for those. can't thank enough Jade from this SMP team for the incredible social media promotion. She's still on it as well. You can still see lots of youth festival things coming out on our Twitter every day. So, and someone else also mentioned that it was a really good idea to make the content sort of downloadable and watchable after it's been presented or the event has happened, and all of that will be, available at least till the end of the year. Suggestions for improvement, definitely more joint sort of MASP involvement. That's our partner office in Malawi, the Malawi-Scotland partnership. Something that we would really, really like to do, in fact, and as we navigate this new digital world, it's becoming more and more apparent that there's certain projects that we should really do that on, and we're really interested to do so. In the past, we're sort of always keen to make sure that we're not setting the agenda for Malawi. MASP is its own office and knows what Malawian people need and want what's relevant and interesting to them. So of course we don't want to sort of run a youth festival that is open for all Malawians when they know what they want and need. But going forwards, absolutely, I think some events are going to be great for equal collaboration, and it's something that we'd really like to work on going forward. So we also, of course, always want to involve more young people. Absolutely, that's been suggested. On board with that. It's been suggested we have fewer events and fewer panelists to increase numbers and create space. I would also agree with that, potentially in terms of capacity and what we can do in our small team as well. Start planning earlier. It's a classic one. It's interesting with COVID because you could start planning as early as you want to, but the situation still changed every week. So planning earlier could have been good, but maybe quite difficult to actually sort of make any tangible difference to sort of how adaptable we needed to be. Making school resources easier to access. We are launching our new website hopefully very soon, so these actually maybe even easier to access now and even easier, sort of better presented on the website. We'll keep looking at ways to best present these as the year goes on. As I've mentioned, they're going to be really something we push throughout 2021. We wanted online sharing space for a continued discussion. Absolutely, we did talk about that before Youth Festival, and there was sometimes just too many things to think about. But I think that would have been great, maybe something like a Slack or a Slack channel or something like that, so that we can keep the conversation going. There was a suggestion of adding an expert facilitator to live events. We did actually feel that it's quite strongly that these events should be youth-led. It should be youth voice, and framed effectively so that everyone knows that we're all trying our best and it's a supportive atmosphere. But it's still an interesting suggestion that we might explore at some point for relevant events. I personally would have actually had better briefings and backup plans for poor internet connections. Sometimes people's audio and video just wasn't good enough, and it would have been easier to sort of brief people before to sort of say, oh, we might need to cut you off if this happens, but don't worry, we'll share your presentation, ask you for a voiceover, and it's still very much worthwhile you turning up. So I've been talking for a very long time, but I'll just give you a quick look at the kind of questions we as a Scotland-Malawi Partnership staff team used to discuss everything we just went through there. So we had key survey questions, which we had all answered in the survey individually. So we came together as a group to discuss what we'd all said individually and what we felt could be done better going forwards. Overwhelmingly, we all thought we should definitely run something similar again, and it's going to be interesting to see where we are in the future, if it's going to be a hybrid in-person/digital event, and to the extent we can involve both our countries, Scotland and Malawi. And I just chucked in a few other questions there to help us think a little bit more critically about the presentation. And I do hope these sorts of questions might inspire you to think about your own work, and how you might be critical of your own projects and events and reflect on them. So thank you so much for listening. I appreciate I've rattled through all of that there, but it's so great to be able to share it with you. I am very much still open anytime, even if it's in 2 years' time. I would still love to know, what did you think of the Youth Festival 2021? You can email me on louisa@scotland-malawipartnership.org, and do tell me your thoughts there. I had an absolute blast delivering and organising this festival, a great team from SMP. We've had a lot of learning from this event, a lot indeed, and it's really going to redefine and shape our work going forward. As we mentioned many times, this event was the chance to do a complete experimentation. That's what it was, and there's a lot of learning here. Still looking forward to hearing from any of you who have not already shared your thoughts, and thank you for your time.